The only thing necessary for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. It's important that people wake up to what is going on. It's time that we read the Constitution. It is error that needs the support of government. Truth can stand alone. That was given to us by Thomas Jefferson. Welcome back to The Real Story. My name's Daniel Happney. Tonight's episode is going to be about the 9/11 Commission report. I found out that it was actually because of these women in New Jersey called the Jersey Girls that there even was a 9/11 Commission report. I've also found out things that we spent more money finding out how Monica and Mr. Bill Clinton got together than we did about 9/11. You'd think that 9/11 would be more important than the other thing, but it's going to amaze you that we spent more money finding out about that. But let's go back to the 9/11 Commission report. Do you realize the first head commissioner we were going to have was a gentleman by the name of, who could it have been? Could it have been Kissinger? Where have I heard that name before? Henry Kissinger. Dr. Henry. Well, Dr. Henry Kissinger. Why wasn't he on the report? You should watch the Jersey Girls show. At some point, we're going to show you Press for Truth, and you may find out why Henry Kissinger wasn't on there. But it's interesting because the gentleman who took over for him was a gentleman by the name of Philip Zelikow. You're going to find out a little bit about Philip Zelikow. What you're going to find out is maybe things were actually omitted from the report. You know, the one that you paid for, the one that was supposed to tell us the truth, maybe find out what we should do or we did wrong or what could be done better. And do you ever wonder why no one was fired? All these things happen. I guess the term coincidence theory comes about, and I think, how could all these coincidences be? So tonight what I'm going to bring you is I'm going to bring you some information on the 9/11 Commission report. I think it's very important that you know it, or at least you know what was omitted from the 9/11 Commission's report, because maybe that is a better way to find the real story. So the reason I'm here today is to tell you that maybe that 9/11 report was a cover-up. Could you imagine that? That's pretty hard to imagine. That's a pretty strong statement. But yeah, the possibility that maybe we're not being told the whole truth. What should we know about the 9/11 report? Well, the first thing we should consider is it's 571 pages. And after I've read the 571 pages, or at least large portions of it, not in its entirety, I found out that there's a lot of things that were omitted, that weren't even entered into there. But testimony yet was still given to them, but they didn't feel it was, important. First off, who ran this 9/11 Commission? I was told a gentleman by the name of Andrew Zelikow. So this, Philip Zelikow. So this Mr. Zelikow, he pretty much ran it, and if I listened to all the other people in the commission thing, they said, well, yeah, he controlled just all of it. As the chairman, I guess you get to do that. But where have we heard that name before? Why do we see lots of pictures of Mr. Philip Zelikow with Condoleezza Rice, with the people in the Bush-Cheney administration? Who set up this commission? Oh, that's right. I think our president set up the commission. That's right. And he did it how long? Like 14 months after 9/11? It's funny, when JFK was shot, they had a commission a lot quicker, okay? When Pearl Harbor happened, gosh, there was a commission formed in 7 days. So these people had a lot of time. I don't know why they took the time. Maybe it was a tough thing to do, and maybe they needed the extra time. But I'm here to tell you that maybe some things were left out of it. How the planes hit the building and stuff. The first thing we're told is there were no fighters sent aloft. I don't know if you saw my previous show, but I found that very interesting, that NORAD, North American Radar Air Defense and stuff, that they couldn't get one fighter plane up to take care of any of these hijackings. Then I found out something the commission didn't really bring apart to you, at least knowledge, and that is there were, 15. Can you imagine that? 15 drills being run that day. 4 of the drills involved hijackings. One of them involved planes crashing into buildings. And of the 4 causing hijackings, they were able to put up on the radar screens of the FAA and also the military more than 29 hijacked planes. What a coincidence, huh? Oh, I'm sorry, we're back to the coincidence theory. But they didn't mention that so much in the report. The commission, didn't, say anything about when anybody was notified, when the FAA, or what happened was the story changed a bunch of times. And now you've got the FAA saying, well, we told you before they hit. As a matter of fact, we told you shortly after they took off from Boston. We told you we had meetings and teleconferences going. And there were even people in the FAA who put out memos saying, gee, we did that and we told you many minutes before. Different stuff, fine. So anyway, the FAA has teleconferences. They say at like 9:20. The FAA said they figured it out at like 8:50 after the first strike that, hey, something's up. Okay? Once again, nobody's ever fired. Nobody's ever bothered. How can this be? What's going on? I mean, have they told you, you know, how can all these timeline things? But the funny thing was, when in testimony, they kept coming up with different times and different people, and we couldn't talk and we couldn't communicate. And the guy in charge of the airplanes, he had to call the Pentagon and wait 9 minutes. And I was told by an FAA air traffic controller that, gosh, they changed the rules, and now they were on the phone to the Pentagon, the FAA, trying to get, you know, planes scrambled. But once again, 1 hour and 40 minutes, no planes scrambled. Not really covered in the report. Why wouldn't they cover all that? Okay, let's go into, you know, what the report said of why the towers collapsed. Okay, well, we've got these twin towers, you know, they never mentioned that, you know, fire had never destroyed a steel frame building, you know, to the point of collapse in the history of mankind. Interesting, huh? Okay, but they didn't mention that. And that other buildings, steel frame recently built buildings, those were built around the 70s and stuff, that they had hotter fires. Fires that burned for hours, up to 20 plus hours. And these, of course, burn for what, about an hour. And once again, longer fires, hotter fires, bigger, you know. But still, didn't mention. Not mention, you know, the towers, there's like 10 features that got me. And this, what made me think of controlled demolition when I looked at them. You know, plumes of smoke coming from below, boof, boof, boof. That's an interesting thing. How does that happen? The planes hit up on the 78th, yet I look and there's boom, boom, boom. All sorts of explosions below. Yeah, they began suddenly. Not a slow, creaky, we're giving way. Okay. Each came straight down. Have you ever seen controlled demolition, people? Each one came, and, you know, just interesting stuff. You know, they produced enormous amounts of dust. When buildings collapse, when concrete collapses and stuff, it's going to crack and fracture. And when it hits the ground, it's going to break up, but it's not going to turn into dust before it gets to the ground. How about the firemen's testimony? You know, the people, the responders that went there, why did they talk about dozens of explosions? Pretty strange, huh? Well, wasn't mentioned in your commission's report. I thought that was interesting. Okay, witness testimonies, once again, not even the firemen, but, you know, people all around saying, hey, I hear explosions, I feel explosions. The grounds are shaking.
I try to say people, in the moment we heard a big explosion coming down.
Just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard and felt.
There was another major explosion. The building itself, literally the top of it came down, sending smoke and debris everywhere.
We understand now there has been a secondary explosion on Tower 2.
Others, some say after secondary explosions.
The building literally shook. You literally shook at the base of this building.
All of a sudden the elevator blew up, smoke. I dragged the guy out, his skin was hanging off, and I dragged him out and I helped him out of to the ambulance.
Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor.
But as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble and more smoke and more dust. I ran inside the buildings, the chandeliers shook, and again, black smoke filled the air. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last.
We saw some kind of explosion, a lot of smoke come out at the top.
Floor by floor instead of popping out.
It was like, it was if they had detonated. They were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
So when I went to pick up the phone, another explosion. And everything shake, and it was so hard that I thought it was an earthquake. Because the sense of everything moving, I told everybody, get under your doors, door frames. But then I said, no, wait, I heard explosions. I said, oh, everybody out, everybody out.
The other thing that we have is we have, you know, none of the steel or any of it was examined. You know, once again, this was a crime. It was a crime to kill people before 9/11. How is it that they could block off these sites and nobody come and, you know, do any forensic, you know, we all watch CSI. Nobody do any forensic anything with it. Scene of a crime. Once again, where are your magazines? Where are your publications saying, well, why didn't we get to look at this? Why didn't we get to examine it?
The authorities allowed the steel to be quickly removed and sold as scrap metal. This removal was protested by the New York Times and Fire Engineering magazine. The 9/11 Commission, however, did not mention it.
Giuliani tells Peter Jennings on one of his shows that he had prior knowledge that the buildings would collapse.
We set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street, which was right there with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management, and we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse.
Did it occur to you at all at that time that these buildings might actually collapse?
Yeah, but not the way they did. It occurred to all of us that they would ultimately collapse over the way buildings, you know, usually collapse, which is in stages. It looked like at some point the top of the building had come off, and then maybe the middle of the building, and then maybe there'd be a shell left, and the way number 7 came down, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, over a period of time. But the idea that it would the implosion that took place, I actually didn't realize that until much later.
Hey, what is this Giuliani guy? Wasn't his command bunker in Building 7? I want to go there. Give me a second. Another things not mentioned by the commission report. The CEO of the security company, once again, Securicom, so you know, was run by Wirt Walker III. You heard me, Wirt Walker III. Coincidence theory, he happens to be George Bush's cousin. That's a coincidence. Who set up the commission? How about this one? His brother, Marvin Bush, was one of the board of directors for Securicom. Who had access to these World Trade Center buildings? The security company, maybe? Are you listening? Does any of it get to you? Okay, World Trade Center 7, 47-story building, collapses in its own footprint. Okay? Wasn't hit by a plane. The guy who was leasing it said on, once again, a PBS show that after talking to the fire chief, they decided to pull the building. Folks, what fire department do you know can demolish a building, let alone make it collapse, a 47-story building in its own footprint? Take a look at the pictures, watch the videos, tell me it's not controlled demolition. And once again, when you watch the video of Building 7, and you watch the squibs go off, when you watch the center of the structure collapse so that it falls in its own footprint, and you say to yourself, how does that happen without controlled demolition? How is it that the company that cleaned up the mess, if anybody could have done forensics, the company chosen was a company by the name of Controlled Demolition? Boy. And as we look at all the other events that have happened, you know, after 9/11 and this and that, some of them over in Europe and not just, you know, over here, there's a lot of interesting things. But we'll get back to the 9/11 Commission report and maybe some things that I feel should have been added but were omitted. Okay? So anyway, no mention that the firefighters removed, you know, they got removed from Building 7 several hours in advance because someone said, you know, it was going to collapse. I mean, they even got it on national TV tape, you know, a gal fire lady, police lady going, hey, you know, everybody's got to get out of here. The building's coming down.
Do you hear that? Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down soon.
The building is about to blow up. Moving back.
All right, guys? Sorry.
We are looking back. There's a building about to blow up. Flame, debris coming down.
Coming over our radio. Get out of the area. The second tower is coming down.
They tell you the second tower is coming down?
Yes, it's about to collapse.
How'd they know that? You know, once again, how does the fire department, the New York City Fire Department, collapse a building? Do you want to tell me? I'd love to know. Do they have their own demo team that I haven't been told about? You know? And since when, now that they allowed that fire to go, by the way, on Building 7, how come when the firemen asked, hey, how come nobody's fighting the fire? It's only on 3 floors. It's not that big, you know? They just let it go. Once again, who was in the building? Why was it important for that building to go? Why wasn't something done? Okay? Why haven't we been told? Why didn't the commission tell us? They don't even mention Building 7. When I say don't mention it, you know, gee, all the stuff, this is on September 11th. So here we are, September 11th, and a 47-story building collapses at 5:28 in the afternoon, and I'll bet you guys didn't even know there was a third building that collapsed. Let alone the contents of that building, who was in that building, what records and what information was lost with that building. Interesting, though. They knew it was going to collapse before it happened. They were able to evacuate people from it. Isn't this, you know, truly interesting? Watch the video. Ask the questions yourself. Okay? Once again, no mention of Larry Silverstein, you know. You know, he's the owner, and he's on a PBS show, and he's saying, I was talking to the fire commander, and we decided to pull the building. The commission omitted that. Why? When a gentleman says, you know, we decided to pull a building, and he's the owner, who's he to one decide that? In the fire department, fire commander, how does a fire commander pull a building? Please, people, ask questions. Find out what's going on. Something's not right in Dodge. Even testimony that was given, like, once again, Norman Mineta, who is the transportation secretary, in the command bunker below the White House with Dick Cheney, our vice president. They were told that a plane's heading towards Washington, okay, many minutes before it got there. Yet Cheney, out of his mouth, this is testimony from Mineta, the order still stands. Well, what order was that?
During the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon. There was a young man who would come in and say to the vice president, the plane is 50 miles out. The plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the vice president, do the orders still stand? And the vice president turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? Well, at the time I didn't know what all that meant. And
the flight you're referring to is the
flight that came into the Pentagon.
Was it the order to not intercept it? I mean, what is the order that still stands? More importantly is, gee, we were told by the FAA, they told them well before, 20, 30, 40 minutes before the planes did any damage. And still, we couldn't get an airplane up? Boy, and the stories kept changing. The FAA story changed until finally they put out a memo, okay? And then, the NORAD story changed. Why all the changing stories? Haven't you ever investigated something yourself, and when stories change, you start wondering, why is the story always changing? All right, so anyway, once again, the FAA at 9:24, 14 minutes before the Pentagon strike, they tell people, is NORAD lying? Who would lie? How many people would it take to do that? How could this happen? How could a guy in a cave make all this happen? Could a guy in a cave do it? Because if so, there's all sorts of guys in cave. More importantly, if all these buildings can collapse because of fire, how come even, magazines, we talked about magazines briefly because of, some of the false stuff they've printed in the past. How could a magazine like, Fire Engineering say, look, this story doesn't hold water? But that doesn't make the press, does it? Laura Brown's memo from the FAA who told, before 9:24 a.m., hey, we're telling people, okay? All this not mentioned in the report, but this is testimony given, even written, when I say written, in the form of memos and stuff. The Pentagon, what was omitted there? Okay, well, they had communication at 9:36, but then they say they had no knowledge. When I say they had communication, people were calling them, and they had no knowledge, huh? Norman Mineta, we discussed how, 10 minutes before it was hit, hey, there's stuff around there. How about the people that are supposed to protect the most protected airspace in the country? Okay, are we to believe that the White House isn't defended, that the Pentagon isn't defended? Okay, do you buy that? Is that something you really believe? Why not show the videos? Okay, here, scratch your head. This is the 9/11 Commission report. They didn't ask, hey, FBI, can we have the videos that you confiscated from the Citgo? Can we have the videos you confiscated from the Sheridan? Can we have the videos from the Department of Transportation cameras on the highway? That's right, folks, you get cameras on your highway. They must want to watch you. The funny thing is, though, none of those were brought in as evidence. These would be clean pictures of a building getting hit by a plane that us, the American people, could say, wow. But not only were we not shown those videos, I'm still trying to figure out why the FBI can't show them, but the commission never even asked for them or subpoenaed them or anything. What kind of commission is this? Okay, Flight 93. It's funny. Many people, because there's no wreckage, and I might even believe myself that there's a possibility maybe that plane was shot down. Okay? Slip of the lip. Mr. Rumsfeld, he just decided to leave. He made a slip of the lip about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, where he said, oh yeah, and that plane that was shot down in Pennsylvania. They didn't tell me that. The 9/11 Commission report told me it was taken down by the passengers, who were recorded on a conversation discussing how they were going to take the T-cart and ram it through the cockpit door. It took an educated person to figure out that cockpit voice recorders that this was supposedly, captured from, don't record the voices in the cabin with the people. But the commission report, once again, gee, they didn't figure that out. They omitted it, Look at their picture, once again. This is in your own report that was presented to you, 571 pages of, I don't think, quite the real story, okay? But you take a look at Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at the hole in the ground. Maybe you want to talk to the mayor, who was the second person there. Why isn't he in the report? Okay? How about, let's talk to the coroner who covers Shanksville, whose job it would be to say, hey, that's a body part, let's get it. Once again, evidence. Remember CSI? Okay? Where's the evidence? They haven't shown you the evidence, but they've told you to shut up and be quiet and listen to what we say and give up all your freedoms, because we now have a war on terror. Haven't we had a war on drugs? Didn't we learn that with Iran-Contra, that members of the CIA move drugs and get money and move arms and get money? Have we learned anything? Are we too afraid to ask questions? What happened to us? We were the home of the free and the brave. All right, so anyway, gee, we get the vice president's timeline. You know, he's down in the bunker. Remember I told you Mineta was down there with him? So he's down in the bunker well before giving command. It's like, my order still stands. And our president, commander-in-chief, the nation's under attack. Stays how long in the classroom? Don't you think he would be not safe there? That the Secret Service, whose job it is to protect the president, would have ushered and moved him out of there? And he's reading a book about goats. The United States of America is under attack, we're led to believe. And he's reading a book about a pet or lost goat. How about, do you want a funny one? Okay, just because you want funny. Go look at the Pentagon. The 5 frames that the Pentagon released from their parking lot. Look at the date code stamp on it. I am not kidding. You think I could make this up? Look at the date code stamp on the video released to us, the American people, to show the plane impacting on the Pentagon. How come the date's wrong? I guess they do things wrong at the Pentagon. Yeah, especially in their own security anyway. Because, you know, security is important. Once again, a war on terror, all the security stuff, we're being sold. This is our, you know, wartime president, okay? They're passing laws that nobody's looking at, okay? Patriot Act was delivered to people 20 minutes before. Has anyone lifted the cover and flipped a couple pages? And tell me how in 20 minutes you can change the paragraph in the U.S. code from this to this? Hello? Do you see what they pulled on you? Are you awake? Are you listening? Okay, so anyway, I got some, you know, this is a funny one, you know. Why the things we were told are false. I tried to come up with some reasons. These are like, we'll give you the top 10 from somebody else. Some of mine, some of theirs. But anyway, no names on the passenger manifests. You want to tell me how you can do that? Huh? Have you ever flown? You know, can you have a seat? They didn't tell us that these guys took box cutters to the the people at check-in and stuff. How did their name did not get on the flight manifest? How? You know, no autopsies. That's kind of convenient, huh? We're told that a passport made it out of the World Trade from the plane that hit it. Yet the black box didn't make it? And these guys weren't on the manifest of the flights? How much are we going to believe? Okay, 5 to 7 of these reported hijackers have been interviewed by the BBC, that's the British Broadcasting Corporation, okay, the Times and the Guardian, alive and well, still in the Middle East. But the FBI, they didn't tell you that, did they, on the 9/11 Commission report? The FBI hasn't even revised their list of the hijackers. Let's get it. 19 hijackers, we're told. Most of them Saudi Arabia. Do we attack Saudi Arabia? Oh, then that's right. When they get sued by the family of 9/11 victims, who defends Saudi Arabia? James Baker. Hey, isn't he the guy you just sent over to Iraq to give you the Baker Commission report that says, well, we can't let the troops go now, sounds Vietnamish to me, because we have to stabilize the country that we just destabilized. What are we building over there? Where's your money going? Is it going to build garrisons? Does this remind you of Rome at all? I mean, what are they building? Why do they get no bid contracts for Halliburton? That's right, Halliburton, the company that owns Kellogg Brown and Root, the one making detention centers in the United States, funded off one of your authorization bills, $385 million of your dollars. And it's not a fake story. Check it out. Maybe you'll find that I'm right. And if you do, what are you going to do, folks? This is not good. Okay, so anyway, back to our 10 things. Okay, special agent from the FBI, Agent Flagg. Well, what did Agent Flagg say? He said that the FBI got the names of the hijackers from a list that Muhammad Atta left in a car. Okay, yeah, I'm going to do all this stuff, so I need a list of them. This is after he goes, Portland, Maine, runs back, gets back to Logan as fast as he can so he can get on board the plane, but not have his name taken. I know, every time I check the flight gates and stuff, people just go running through. They don't have multiple doors. They don't have security. They don't have no way to get your name before you go on the plane. Do you remember what life was like before 9/11? You still had to give them your name before you boarded the plane. You had to have a boarding pass, Or what? You need a box cutter? How did that work? Okay, all right, we're told that these guys are very poor pilots. The flight instructors who flew with Hani Hanyo said this guy could barely control a Cessna 172. Okay, they had to take it up 3 times before they even let him fly, before he could rent it. And this guy can fly a 757, super maneuvering. Hello, people. All right, let's go back to Zakhar's Messiah. Well, I don't know. Maybe there are some Islamic Muslim believers in our audience. I would like to ask you this, and maybe you could come on the show and we could talk about this, because something made me scratch my head when I listened to the last, some of the recording junk. They were said to have said Allah Akbar, which I guess turns to be God is great. Please let me know if I'm wrong. But when I talk to people that I know that are religious and understand Islam, they said the last thing that if an Islamic person knew they were going to die, they might say something more like, there is but one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Please come on my show and tell me if that other thing makes sense to you. Because I think the people that wrote the script in the 9/11 Commission report don't understand Islam at all either. I'm not professing to. I don't know, but I'd love to have someone come on and tell me, that makes sense to them. Okay. Last thing, gee, the 10 thing, this is like David Letterman, right? Zachary Massari, he had a previous confession. Hey, stories are changing, right? He had a previous confession, not dealing with 9/11. That's interesting. How come he didn't, say, I want the Fifth Amendment? He was here in the United States when he's being tried. You can't self-incriminate and stuff. This one gets me, though. This really gets me. The FBI agent, dealing with Zacharias, gave testimony to the commission that he had told his superiors 70 times that there was a plan to take planes and terrorize people with them, crash them into buildings and stuff. If he said it one time to his superior, okay, you could say, look, they wasn't listening, whatever. If he said it 10 times to his superiors, you could say, well, gee, maybe the guy's a real moron he's talking to. But 70 times, people? What if we investigate and then we read the Pensacola news thing that some of the, quote, hijackers were being trained at U.S. military bases? Yeah, in our newspapers it says, gee, we know that those people were in the States and they were even at our bases. Doesn't any of this stuff look like patsy stuff to you? Remember, Osama bin Laden, we gave him Stinger missiles. Now he's a patsy, he's the big enemy, which I believe will never catch him because you can't kill a ghost, and why would they want to kill him? He's so important. As you know, during that 9/11 Commission report where they threw it in the drink at the Tea Party, I had a great opportunity. I was one of the first people to, on video, interview a former air traffic controller who worked out of Boston. His name's Robin Horton. And you'll see and you'll learn what I learned that day. Not only that things had changed as far as what the FAA was required to do under an emergency condition, but more importantly that he said within 4 hours of the event he knew it was an inside job, that something was wrong, that, something just didn't smell right. And he waited. And I asked him, I said, why did you wait? And he says, at first, I only knew my little piece of it. I believe they call it compartmentalization or whatever, whenever you do things like this. If people only know pieces, then they can't really bring forth, hey, here's the whole thing gathered up for you and stuff. But listen to what he says. Listen to why an air traffic controller who worked at Boston Logan knew within a short amount of time that something was seriously wrong. Okay? Yeah, you listen to a retired Air Force colonel who has, once again has his degree, when I say degree, former Air Force colonel who flew fighter planes in Vietnam, 101 missions, okay? I could give you the bio of the gentleman. Ran the SDI program. Remember the Strategic Defense Initiative? Mr. Bob Bowman, he flew intercept flights here in the United States. Why does he say it's not right, things are wrong, okay? We should do this thing right. We should investigate again and not listen to the, to the basic lies. Once again, take a look. Ask questions, people. This is important. We interviewed other individuals there and stuff who took their time to try to wake up Americans. Why? Because your child's freedom's important, okay? And your children's children. What are we going to leave them? Are we going to leave them a country that's forever on a war on terrorism? The warring nations of, come on, people. Haven't you learned anything from the war on drugs? Okay? We learned years ago that it was the CIA that was moving drugs. Yet we still have a war on drugs today. Have you put it together yet? Okay, are drugs easier or harder to get? Are we growing opium in Afghanistan now or aren't we? When I say we, is opium being grown in Afghanistan now again? Okay, what have we learned? So, please, take the time. Listen to the people I interview. Maybe they have a perspective that I couldn't bring to you and that you didn't have. And that maybe, once again, the major media, that being controlled by 5 companies, okay, 90% of your media, maybe they didn't present this to you. Okay? It's time to wake up. Don't let these, I believe, whether you want to call it the shadow government, let's see, what names did I come up with it? I came up with the secret team, okay, the rogue network and stuff. Remember the Iran-Contra people? Okay, what were they in business to do? They were in the business to topple governments, to change the way people think politically, okay? Learn about this. This is not good stuff. This is affecting you, and it will affect your future. Just because some crime network gets in a position of power is no reason for us to give up our rights, okay? Start demanding, that the truth come out. Start demanding that, we find out who's responsible and we take this stuff. Don't always listen to the first, thing that major media that keeps on telling you. Once again, every night when you turn it on, what do you hear? You hear the same stories, hand spoon fed out of, every channel, same stories. Well, we're going to tell you who's running for president next time. It's going to be Hillary, Obama, Osama, or whatever his name is, and Mr. Edwards or whatever, John Edwards, Folks, where did these people come from? Who pays their salaries? What parties do they go to? What clubs do they belong to? Are they skull and bone members like our last two presidential candidates? Learn about electronic voting. I know this is going to sound, different. This is not what you get on your regular television. That's why I came here. That's why I want you to investigate. That's why I want you to find out the real story. Save the Republic.